The grocery store was buzzing with weekend shoppers when an elderly woman quietly placed bread, milk, and a few vegetables on the counter. Her frail hands shook as she counted her coins, realizing she didn't have enough. Murmurs of impatience rose from the line behind her. Embarrassed, she whispered to put items back. But before she could, the teenage cashier froze, eyes wide, and made a choice that no one expected, an action that brought the entire store to tears. The fluorescent lights hummed above the crowded supermarket as shoppers rushed through the aisles, filling carts with everything from snacks to bulk groceries. At Register 3, the line stretched long, people checking their watches, tapping their feet, impatient for their turn. At the end of the line stood Margaret, a frail woman in her late 70s. Her gray cardigan hung loosely on her shoulders, and her tired eyes scanned the small basket she clutched. She had chosen carefully. Just a loaf of bread, a small carton of milk, 2 apples, and a packet of tea. Essentials, nothing more. When it was finally her turn, she offered a soft smile to the cashier. Ethan, a teenage boy barely 17, greeted her politely as he began scanning her items. He noticed her hands trembling slightly, the way her eyes flickered nervously toward the screen where the total would appear. "That'll be $14.75, Ethan said gently. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a handful of coins and a crumpled $5 bill. She counted slowly, her fingers stiff with age, until the coins made a small pile on the counter. Then she stopped, frowning. Ethan waited. The people in line shifted impatiently. A man cleared his throat loudly. Margaret's cheeks flushed. She whispered, almost to herself, "Oh dear. I don't have enough." The whispers behind her grew louder. A woman muttered, "Why don't they open another register?" Another sighed, "Some of us don't have all day." Margaret's eyes watered. "I'm sorry," she said softly to Ethan. "Could you put back the apples and the tea? I can't afford them." Her voice cracked on the last word. Ethan looked at her, then at the coins. His stomach tightened. Something about the way she said it, so resigned, so used to disappointment, made him ache inside. She wasn't just short a few dollars. She was short on hope. He hesitated, unsure what to do. Customers stared, waiting. Margaret lowered her head, embarrassed, her thin hands clutching the edge of the counter as if to steady herself. For Ethan, it was just another day at his part-time job, until that moment. Something in his chest told him he couldn't just stand there and watch her give up the little she had. And that's when he made a decision that would change everything. Ethan's hands hovered over the register keys. He could have just followed the routine, remove the items, adjust the total, move on. That's what every cashier was trained to do. But looking at Margaret's trembling hands, the shame in her downcast eyes, something inside him rebelled. Without a word, Ethan reached into his own back pocket, pulled out his worn wallet, and slipped out a $10 bill. He slid it discreetly toward the register. Margaret blinked, confused. "Oh no, dear. I can't let you do that." But Ethan shook his head firmly. "It's okay, ma'am. Please, let me." The customers who had been sighing impatiently moments ago suddenly fell silent. A hush swept over the line. They watched as the teenage cashier paid for the remaining groceries out of his own pocket. His hands didn't shake, and his eyes didn't waver. Margaret's lips trembled. She pressed her hand over her chest, tears forming in her eyes. Why would you do that for me?" she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Because someone once did it for me." The line behind them shifted again, but not with impatience this time. Some customers leaned forward, listening. Others softened, guilt flashing across their faces for their earlier complaints. Margaret stared at him, bewildered. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated, glancing around nervously. His manager wasn't nearby. He lowered his voice. "A few years ago, my mom couldn't afford groceries either. We stood at a counter just like this. I was your age's grandchild then, helpless, watching her cry. But the cashier that day, she paid for us. She told my mom not to give up." His throat tightened. That moment kept us going. I never forgot it. And now, it's my turn. Margaret gasped softly, her tears spilling freely. She reached across the counter and touched Ethan's hand with her frail fingers. "Bless you, child," she whispered. The crowd around them was no longer silent out of shock but out of reverence. A woman in line discreetly wiped her eyes. A man behind her set down his phone, ashamed of his earlier impatience. And then, something unexpected happened. Another customer stepped forward and added a $20 bill to the counter. "Put this toward her groceries," he said. Then another voice, "Here, let me help too." Soon, a small pile of bills grew beside the register. Strangers, who moments earlier were complaining, now competed to contribute. The entire store seemed to transform in that instant, shifting from a place of routine transactions into a scene of shared humanity. Margaret covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. She had come in expecting to walk away with less than she needed. Instead, she was walking away with more than groceries, she was walking away with dignity. And it was all because one teenage cashier had decided to act. Margaret's arms trembled as she tried to gather the money, shaking her head. "No, no, I can't take all this. It's too much. Please, I can't accept it." But Ethan leaned closer, his voice soft but firm. "You're not taking, it's being given. There's a difference." The customers who had donated nodded, encouraging her. A mother with a stroller added gently, "Please, ma'am, let us help. One day, it might be one of us standing where you are." Margaret's tears spilled freely now, carving lines down her wrinkled cheeks. She whispered, "I came here thinking I'd have to go hungry tonight. I never thought anyone would care." The manager arrived just then, alerted by the unusual crowd at Ethan's register. At first, his brows knit in confusion, but as he saw the scene, the pile of money, the elderly woman's tears, the customers quietly nodding in approval, his expression softened. He didn't reprimand Ethan. Instead, he cleared his throat, stepped forward, and announced loudly, "Every customer in this line today, your groceries are on the house." A wave of gasps and murmurs spread through the store. For a heartbeat, it felt like everyone had forgotten they were in a supermarket. Instead, it felt like a community, like a family brought together by a single act of compassion. Margaret clutched her small grocery bag to her chest, then looked at Ethan with an expression he would never forget. "Young man," she said, her voice trembling, "you didn't just pay for food today, you paid for hope." And then, something even more powerful happened. A man from the far end of the line, dressed in a suit, stepped forward. "Son," he said, addressing Ethan, "you've done something remarkable. People don't think teenagers care anymore. But you've proven otherwise. What's your name?" Ethan swallowed nervously. "Ethan Parker, sir." The man smiled faintly. "I own a scholarship fund for underprivileged youth. Come see me tomorrow. A boy with a heart like yours deserves a future without limits." The entire store erupted in applause. Some clapped, some cheered, some simply stood in awe, wiping tears they didn't expect to shed on an ordinary grocery trip. Phones were lifted, capturing the moment, though no video could truly capture the warmth that filled the air. Margaret reached out one last time, holding Ethan's hand between both of hers. "Your mother must be so proud," she whispered. Ethan blinked back tears. "I hope she is." The crowd parted as Margaret walked toward the exit, her groceries in hand and her dignity restored. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled, a real, radiant smile that made strangers in the store weep. And Ethan, standing behind his register, realized he had just experienced a moment that would stay with him forever. The story didn't end when Margaret left with her groceries. By morning, a shaky phone video of Ethan quietly slipping his money into the register, followed by customers helping and the manager declaring groceries free, had gone viral. Within hours, hashtags like #hope at the register and #kindnesschain were trending. People everywhere shared their own stories of kindness. Strangers wept in the comments, promising to be an Ethan when they saw someone struggling. Ethan, however, didn't seek fame. He showed up to work the next day as usual, tying his green apron like nothing had happened. But his register line stretched long, not with customers just buying groceries, but with people eager to thank him. Some shook his hand, others hugged him, many slipped him notes of gratitude. A week later, Margaret returned with homemade cookies. "I don't have much," she said softly, "but I want to give back a little of the kindness you gave me." Ethan accepted them with teary eyes, but what touched him most was her laughter, light, free, alive. She no longer carried shame but dignity, hope, and friendship. The businessman's scholarship offer soon became real, but what Ethan cherished more was the truth he had discovered: even the smallest act of compassion could ripple outward. That night, he wrote in his journal, "It's not money that changes the world, it's the courage to care." Compassion costs nothing, yet it's the greatest wealth we have. Sparkles, sometimes the greatest wealth is compassion, and it costs nothing to give.